Hey guys, welcome back. This week we are going to dive into narcissism and we're going to talk about really dominant type of personalities. I want to give you some insight in terms of the differences between healthy, confident person and someone who is narcissistic. I also want to give you some tips on how to really deal with a very strong-willed, stubborn type of personality. Dominant people tend to be really confident. They tend to be people that will assert themselves and are totally comfortable with verbal communication. They're very comfortable with telling you what they think, how they feel. They don't have a problem with that. They're usually people who enjoy leadership type of roles. They like to be in control. They can tend to be a little defensive sometimes if you do have a difference of opinion. They are independent, they're self-reliant. Really, that's what a leader is someone who is going to depend on themselves to make the decisions, really tell people what it is that they need, and to dictate in a way, almost to manage. They also are very resilient. They can overcome things. A lot of these qualities aren't necessarily bad qualities at all. We need leaders. We need assertive people. It's healthy to be assertive and know who you are and know what you want and be able to communicate that in a really clear way. To have that type of healthy competitiveness or charisma or confidence, that's a great thing. And a lot of times, honestly, that's what we're talking about on this channel, is how to be more of your authentic, confident self. Where it becomes a little bit of a problem is when we start looking at these 6 differences between someone who is healthy and someone who is narcissistic. So the one thing that we're always talking about with narcissism is the lack of empathy. So if we're talking about someone who has empathy and consideration for others, that's really the big difference between someone who is healthy and still, you can have all of those traits. You can still be dominant. You can still be, stubbornness isn't always necessarily a bad thing. It means you're very passionate about your opinions and how you feel and what you want. Obviously, where it can be a little harmful in relationships with other people is when you're just completely unwilling to empathize and to put yourself in someone else's shoes. If you don't have that ability to empathize, then you won't consider someone else's point of view. Someone who's narcissistic, we're not going to see any of those traits. We're going to see someone that very much lives in a it's my way or the highway type of mentality. We're also going to see a person who very much thinks that the way they view things is the only way. When you don't have empathy, then you leave room for things like gaslighting and manipulation to actually happen in order for me to not consider your side and for you to actually think that my side is the right way to go. So let's talk about that strong personality and how it can be beneficial and not something that's toxic. If you look at a healthy person, the way they're going to use their confidence is always going to be for the greater good. Narcissists are always going to be motivated by dominance, by what they're going to get out of it. So they're motivated by the validation, the admiration, the way that you're going to view me. This is where someone could be doing something for the greater good, but it's really not for the greater good. It's how it's going to make that person feel. And sometimes that's something that's tricky to spot, and you may not always be able to spot that. You'll start to see over time how this person is very self-serving, how their dominance and their confidence isn't really about anyone else but themselves. Unfortunately, you're going to believe the mask, you're going to believe the facade and think that this person's actually good. In a long-term relationship, you will see that this person really doesn't ever think about anyone but themselves, and everything that they do is always for their own personal gain. Of course, when you're dealing with an old boss or someone at work or an ex-partner, for any victim or any person that has to deal with this person, they might get very frustrated because they don't want people to believe the mask. People are going to sometimes believe the mask. Sometimes people are going to really believe that this person is a good person and that they're doing it with the right intentions. In terms of your own mental health and happiness, you really just have to let that stuff go, because if you're going to hold on to someone believing the mask and thinking that this person is absolutely amazing when you know that they're just doing it for their own selfish reasons and it has nothing to do with doing the right thing, and you're just going to drive yourself crazy. And that's where you definitely are living in your ego, because you want people to see this person for who they are. You want to expose this person. It's not your job. Don't waste your time. I know it's easier said than done, but you really have to work through that ego that wants everyone to see this person for who they are. Who cares? Who cares if one person believes the lie? A healthy person will always be able to listen to criticism, feedback, where they can hear another point of view and And maybe sometimes they won't like it because, look, we all have egos and we all don't want to really have anyone not see our side or not agree with us. But really quickly, that ego will subside when you're dealing with someone who's a little bit more enlightened and evolved, because they don't really feel the need for you to accept how they feel, or they don't feel the need for you to like agree with them. This is still how they feel. They won't need that validation. Someone who's narcissistic will. So when you don't agree, you'll either get backlash, you'll either get defensiveness, and this is really either the two places that this person's going to live. Most people who have narcissistic personality disorder will come with maybe a little bit of defensiveness, and even that can look different. Defensiveness doesn't have to be arguing with you. It can just be these little jabs or a little bit of gaslighting, like just real subtle things, but you will always get backlash. You can know someone who's assertive and confident and dominant, and it's not done in a really toxic way. And this is where they maintain their relationships with people. They show people respect. They want to hear their side. They consider their opinions wholeheartedly, not just saying it just to like be a healthy person. They really are inclusive in that way. They just have a way that they live and carry themselves that is not like others, because in this area of their life, they are very confident in their abilities. They are true leaders. Whereas someone who is more in that narcissism area is going to be a leader in more of a dictator, wanting control. This gives me a high. This is feeding my ego. Your opinions don't matter. I'll consider them, but I really don't respect you and I don't respect anyone else. It is such a huge ego that's there that makes them feel like they are the smartest, most attractive. That was Annie, my dog, the most capable. It's just, you guys know. I mean, you guys know the drill. Let's just be honest. Being able to spot this is sometimes very difficult, and sometimes you just got to give it time. You got to give it time to be able to know the difference between someone who is very healthy and lives in these spaces versus someone who isn't. And these are really the differences between the way they handle situations in life between a healthy person and a toxic one. We all aspire to be that person that is just comfortable in their own skin. I mean, that's something that we're always practicing. Even the most confident person who is healthy. I'm sure you've all met that person before where you spoke to them at a work function, you maybe met them out, at a restaurant or through a friend, or maybe you have a friend or whoever, it doesn't really matter. But we've all met the person that when we speak to them and we see them, there's just something about them. Their energy is light. They're easygoing in conversation. They know who they are. They have such a comfortableness in their own skin. They cultivate their own happiness. I mean, I'm getting excited just talking about it. Like, let me be this person all the time. And as much as we can possibly be that person in some situations, not all situations are we that person, because we're human beings and we're insecure at times and we have our own fears and worries and stresses, and that is just going to happen. Dealing with a strong personality really has to do with one thing. You have to be able to be calm and composed, and that can be very difficult sometimes depending on the type of relationship that you have with a person. If there is emotional resentment or some kind of anger that you feel for this person, when you're living in those spaces, you will never come to the table as your healthy self. You will always come from the anger and the resentment. So it is very important that you learn boundaries. And sometimes the boundaries is not just necessarily with them, but also with yourself. It is your responsibility to not enter in a conversation or interaction with this person when your energy is off. When you are in a bad mood, whether it's with them or with something else in general, it is your job to be at a space where you can let that go and you can come to the table in a different way. If you come with the anger, with the resentment, all of those things, it's not going to do you any good. And I'll tell you, I think one of the hardest things when having to deal with a strong personality in general, not just someone who is narcissistic, is you releasing that ego a little bit and coming from a calm, healthy space yourself. If you can't do that, then especially if you're dealing with someone who's toxic and narcissistic, all you're going to get is them sucking more of your energy, you being depleted, you being frustrated, you're never going to get this person to see your side. You're never going to get this person to consider what you think, how you feel. You can offer opinions, and obviously this video, I'm not going to talk about every different type of relationship that you could possibly have with a strong-willed narcissistic person. If you're dealing with someone at work, it's going to look a little different than if it's your father or mother, if it's your sister or brother, but the outline of what you need to do is the same regardless of the type of relationship that you have with this person. A lot of times when people are dealing with someone who's narcissistic in the workplace, honestly, this is where they will leave a job. You will leave because a lot of people stay in positions because of their work environment. And when their work environment is very toxic, there's no amount of money that's going to keep a person there. You have to be able to set and enforce boundaries. I talk about boundaries so much. It's something that I have focused on a lot over the years because boundaries are important, not just dealing with unhealthy people, but boundaries within yourself, learning how to self-discipline to not allow yourself to go in directions that are not healthy for you. That's something that we have to learn as well how to do. So understanding the steps to boundaries. And if you're interested, you can actually click the link down below. I offer a free mini course on boundaries that you can click that link and get that today. Great stuff. Gives you kind of like the layout, 1, 2, 3 steps on how to really do this stuff. And it's important to know what these steps are because when you look at an outline of how to do something, you can see where you struggle right now with this process called boundaries. So where do you struggle in this process of boundaries with this type of person? That's very important because then it'll help you to break down something into smaller steps versus trying to understand how to do this, getting really frustrated in the process, and then just giving up or being reactive. Coming to the table with not a ton of emotion, I know is really hard to do. I want you to stay focused on what it is that you're actually talking about. So this is really beneficial when you're co-parenting because, or really any kind of relationship, but very much so co-parenting where you're not allowing the conversation to go off into like these emotional outbursts or anger or talking about something else that it was not what we're talking about right now. This is also a great skill even with any person in any relationship because even someone who's not narcissistic, we can all get a little wounded, we can all get a little defensive, we can all be a little passive aggressive, we can all bring things from other situations or times into the conversation that we're talking about right now, and those things have nothing to do with what we're talking about right now. So learning how to keep a conversation focused on what it is that we're actually talking about and getting to that resolution, huge skill because it means you have self-control, self-mastery, emotional control, whatever you want to call it, to not allow the conversation or not allow that person to dictate the emotional all over the place that they want to go with this conversation. You're forcing it to stay right here. It also means that you're not getting reactive when they do try to throw something at you to kind of like throw you off. I want you to avoid power struggles. If you resonate with being a dominant person, a very assertive person, a confident person, and you're dealing with someone who's narcissistic who can also live in this space, I'm sorry, but there are going to be times where this power struggle is really going to happen. And you very much want to learn how to come to the table, removing that ego as much as you possibly can. Guys, I hope this video helped you. I hope it gave you some insight. We are actually, for the next month, doing 30% off all of my courses as well. So if you are interested in taking any one of my courses, I will link everything down below and you can use the codes are down there as well. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you have not already, and I will see you in my next video. Take care, guys.